You're now listening to the Adiel Gorel Show. Each episode, I'll bring you the latest news from my discussions with top health and wellness experts so that you can bring yourself into better health. Today, on the Adiel Gorel Show.
Yes. Yeah. Comparison's the thief of joy, right? And you are right. So for some people, it can be mildly motivating and can help them to say, hey, I also want to start my own business, or hey, I also want to start my little store on Etsy, or whatever that thing is that someone else, inspired you to do. For many people, it can shut us down. And, that's the experience of being alive in our era. And where all this comes back to, and this is a lot of the work that I've done over the years as a coach of individuals and teams, is just for a quick hot sec, put them aside and just get really refocused on you. What makes you feel most alive?
Hi, everybody. It's a joy to be here with you today. And we have an exciting guest on the show, Jodi Wellman. Jodi, welcome to the show.
Adiel, I'm excited to be here with you.
As am I. So, it seems as though something that you talk about, something that you put up at the forefront would be a bit harsh in a way. I mean, death, the idea of death. But I will begin by saying that for me personally, it's not. I remember actually it brings back, I traveled a lot in South America following the Carlos Castaneda books. In the Carlos Castaneda books, his teacher, Don Juan, told him you should live life as if death was sitting on your shoulder. And I know what that means, and I'm sure that's what it means to you, but please share with us what it means to you and how it all happened.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love, first of all, that you're not gravely offended by our conversation. Obviously, if you were, we wouldn't be talking right now.
Was that a pun?
It was good.
Okay.
You're so right that admittedly, death is the number one fear out there, even more so than public speaking. And so people don't tend to want to openly talk about it. But once I get my foot in the door and we can have this conversation like what we're going to have, it's intended to be more about living than dying. And I've always been fascinated by the idea that we are, in fact, impermanent. I've always found it to be, quite frankly, a little bit, absurd. We're all working so very hard to live lives we love. I am a positive psychology practitioner, and it's all about living lives worth living. And yet we're working so very hard for that, nor should we stop. But that then all of a sudden it's going to come to a screeching halt. And so that always amused me. And then, I've had some eye openers in my own life, losing my mom in her 50s, for example, and seeing her pass away with what my perception was a slew of regrets, a whole list of things that she wished that she could have, should have taken action on, but didn't. And that woke me up to this realization of, it was not a spoiler alert. I knew we were temporary, but let's get on with the business of living. And so, I've really started studying and did my grad school thesis from the University of Pennsylvania on mortality as a motivator. So I am raring to go to get it out there and to have this conversation with you about it.
So I enjoy very much already the premise that knowing we have a finite time. Yeah. By the way, not just in life. When you go to college, they give you an assignment. We are all very lazy beings. If there's no time, but if there's a deadline, there's a deadline. Yeah. So, it's there everywhere. But, you could argue, if you look at the popular media, movies, series, there are many about people who live forever, immortal people. And, invariably, it always comes up with, okay, you've lived for 3,000 years. Do you get a little bored? Do you get a little, what's going on? What drives you?
Yes.
So that's one way. Yeah. And the other is there are at least 2 billion people, I would say, on Earth who believe that we are all, immortal.
Yeah.
And we simply change bodies like you change a car.
Yeah.
So that's another way of looking at it.
Yeah.
given all of that,
Yeah.
let's hear your take on it and how it can make our life, given that we have a so-called deadline,
Yep.
more fulfilling.
Oh yeah. Well, your deadline point is tremendous because most of us do need that little bit of a kick in the butt to get moving on something. And so there have been philosophers over the years who've debated exactly what you've said around the what if we live forever? And most people, the idea, the notion sounds good, but we don't get on with it unless we feel like we have the deadline. And so there's this concept in psychology, and it goes beyond psychology, but called temporal scarcity. And so this is actually just the regular scarcity heuristic that's out there around any asset that is rare or temporary, it soars in value. And so that does apply to our lives. And when we call it temporal scarcity, which was the notion of time being scarce, we tend to value and favor the very thing that is limited time only in a way that we take for granted something that will go on and on and on forever, as the thought experiment would go.
It reminds me, again, I don't want to go to popular, entertainment all the time, but there was a movie with Queen Latifah.
Okay.
And she was given something like 3 months to live. So she sold everything she had. Yeah. She went to France. She was living it up in a fancy hotel and met a man, fell in love. And then, of course, the Hollywood, ending, they were wrong. But her whole life has changed because she got a deadline. Right?
Yep. Well, you highlight something that's interesting because a lot of us go through that notion of what would you do if you had a week left to live, and even the Queen Latifah 3 months. It's too condensed of a time frame to actually be realistic because, of course, we would drain the bank account. We would, do things that we should not speak of here on this podcast. We would live it up in ways that are
let's
just.
Let's speak about it. No, let's
go there. Hedonistic pleasure, right? And that gives us a hint at how we might want to live. But I think a more realistic way of looking at it is, what if you knew, you had 10 years left? So enough of a runway where you still need to keep a little bit of dough to fund your life. But those are the little experiments that tend to serve us better. So when I do the countdown, and I am very fanatical about actually counting how many Mondays we have left, and we roughly get 4,000 to start with, give or take. So I, for example, know now I have 1,890 if I, in fact, play my cards right. And that is the example to me, and that's what we're talking about deadline.
From looking at you, I would guess many more Mondays than that.
Well, thanks. I mean, if you have a fortune, that crystal ball going on right there, then I like what you're reading. But you know what? I could have a brain aneurysm tonight, and we could just, you'll just remember me of having a conversation one day. You never know. We all know that. And so this notion of counting our remaining Mondays in order to activate temporal scarcity, that's the game here. And it's about recognizing we do slip into autopilot. We do take our lives for granted, even though we know that there is going to be a deadline. And let's wake up to the fact that I may not even have 1,890. And by the way, do you know how many Mondays you have left? Should we do the math together?
No.
No? Do you want to do the math together?
No. Because I plan to live up to 164 and a half. It's my plan. I
like your style. Yes. Well, we could do the math on that, but that might defeat some of the point. Okay, so 164 years. I love it in a bit. You still have a deadline. I like what you're saying here. Do you feel motivated by the idea that life is short, so get on with it? When you think about it, what does it do for you?
Yeah. I mean, the very notion, again, going back to the very beginning, the Don Juan, live as though death is on your shoulder, is extremely useful. I completely resonate with your message, with what you do. I resonate with it. And again, I go back to deadlines. I mean, are you familiar with the game Ms. Pac-Man?
No, tell me about it.
Okay. It was one of those video games that come in a huge box, and it was at the Student Union of Stanford University. And I became a master at Ms. Pac-Man for the simple reason that I would have a huge assignment, a huge work due at 8 a.m.
Yep.
Here I am, it's 2:30 a.m. I'm at the Student Union playing Miss Pac-Man. The work would be done by 8, but I mean, it's called procrastination, right?
Yep.
I mean, we procrastinate in how we live life, not just on how we do, an assignment and become an expert on Miss Pac-Man. So what's our Miss Pac-Man?
Yeah.
TV? Yeah. I mean, like that, right?
Yep. Okay, this procrastination topic is delightful to me because you're exactly right. It's the most widespread version of it that exists. And so you're highlighting something that rankles me beyond belief. And this is the thing that makes me want to reach out and grab people and shake them, but lovingly. And that is this idea that procrastination in life means the notion typically of, I'll get to that later. I'll go travel to Prague. I'll do that I'll do that when work dies down. Well, I don't know about you, but like work ain't dying down. Or I'm going to do that when I retire. That one is the biggest fallacy of all. Retirement. Well, number one, as discussed, we might not make it there. But number two, what if you are not as able-bodied to climb the Spanish steps in your retirement as you think you are now? And then number three is the biggest point of all, which is, what about the life you're living until you get there? Does that mean you're postponing your existence? And I do believe that that is what it means. And that is our opportunity to shake that up and start living more now and later. We want it all, right? Now and later. That's the key.
The word retirement, in itself has a shade of resigned to retirement. I'm getting into the corridor that leads me towards death, but in a sort of a resignation,
Yeah. I know you do a lot of work in that space, even on the financial side. And so you are right that even if you've got the means with which to do the things that you've postponed, I do agree that there is a bit of a flavor to it. My recommendation is that, and it's based on science, is that people who have a really positive view about what's in store for them as they age, whether that includes their retirement when they're not working or working part-time or whatnot, they tend to have more vitality and meaningful lives when they get there. And so right now it's about start projecting. How do you want to be? Are you going to be the get up and go type? Start imagining that version of you down the road. And then, but back to the point about all we have is now, because there might not be a later. How do you want your life to be now? And that's the biggest opportunity that I think most of us, we let slip by because we get swept up in the current of work, tasks, silly, stupid stuff you already touched on, TV screens, all the silly stuff that helps us. We want to zone out because life's just crazy, right? And we have an opportunity to just plug a little more in and say, wait, what if I woke up to life and actually lived it like I meant it? Like what would that look like to live with more intention? That's our opportunity in the specter of death on the horizon.
Yeah, but we have to also make a sub-distinction maybe. You clearly are a naturally enthusiastic person, full of vigor and zest. Yeah. I'm a pretty, enthusiastic person myself. But there could be people who are enjoying life fully, but they are not that kind of personality.
Yes.
They're more quiet. It still doesn't mean that they're not bursting with life.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that. So I was doing a presentation recently for an association, and one woman said to me, but what if my idea, she goes, I'm more introverted. What if my idea, because I talk about living an astonishing life, and that's a pretty grandiose word. She said, what if my version of astonishing is actually really simple? And man, I went up and I high-fived her because as much as I am this sort of joie de vivre, gusto type, I too I'm a homebody actually introvert. And I love the notion of this is all relative. Yeah. This is all relative. So your version of a life that feels well-lived, that has vitality in it, could be very different than mine, than the person next to you, than the producer of this podcast, right? And so I respect that. And I want to make a really big disclaimer that the recommendation right now to grab life by the you-know-what and live it, it's on your terms. And so that might mean in a way that is Friday night, pizza, couch, glass of wine, quiet, lovely. Or it might mean getting on your yacht and going out and having parties where helicopters are landing on your yacht. Whatever your style is, go for it. But there's room for all of us. And there is no judgment about what an astonishing life could or should look like, as long as you're feeling like you're living it the way you want to be living it.
Oh, but you just highlighted something that I think is a very key point.
Yeah.
So now that we have all these social media, outlets, which in addition to the television became another distraction and time usage device. However, let's say that somebody says, I got it. I'm 50 years old. I might have another 40 years left, maybe 50, whatever. Let me just go to the max. And here's my max. And I'm feeling so good. Then they happen to look at one of those social media and they see the person with the yacht, with the helicopters, and they say, you know what? I'm defeated. Forget it. I'm not even trying because I can never be that. So, the relativity means a lot. I mean, if people compare themselves to some standard, that will never be met because there's always a person who is more X or Y or Z.
Yes. Yeah. Comparison's the thief of joy, right? And you are right. So for some people, it can be mildly motivating and can help them to say, hey, I also want to start my own business, or, hey, I also want to start my little store on Etsy, or whatever that thing is that someone else, inspired you to do. For many people, it can shut us down. And, that's the experience of being alive in our era. And where all this comes back to, and this is a lot of the work that I've done over the years as a coach of individuals and teams, is just for a quick hot sec, put them aside and just get really refocused on you. What makes you feel most alive? And not the version of you that you want to portray on your own social media, or that you want your neighbors to see, or that you want your, parent you're trying to please to see. Everybody else aside, when it's just you, or you and your family or friends that you want to be with. What brings you joy? What makes you happy? And this sounds ridiculously simple, but I just have a simple exercise. It's writing out 30 things that make you happy, that bring you joy, contentment. And the key is that a vast majority of them have to actually be accessible things. They can't be, oh, I'm really happy when I am backpacking across Europe, if that's not going to be the thing you do regularly, right? It needs to be stuff that's around you. Things that you just might take for granted that, might be, pitter-pattering through the garden, or just going through a walk with the dog at the end of the day and looking out at the water, or watching a sunset, something that you actually have access to. And here's the challenge. 2 things I notice, and I'm curious your response to this. Many people I work with are actually at a touch. They think writing out 30 things is going to be torture. I don't know, because most people don't fully stop and they don't acknowledge the stuff that actually is going to make them feel alive and energized, okay, or just happy. That's one thing. They don't even know what that is, and it takes time to come up with the list. That's fine. And then number 2 is that when asked, well, when was the last time you did do origami, or you did do the poetry you like to write, or whatever the thing is on your list? Many people admit that, well, it's been a while, because we're caught up in the monotonous, highly functioning zombie routine of work and tasks. And that is a list that if you got 30 things there, then that to me is like, there's the answers to the test for you. Prescribe yourself. What if it took 20 minutes? 20 minutes for you now to go do that thing you said you like to do. And yet we overlook it, right? We're living lives where we know the answers, but we're just not spending time devoted to stuff that might give us a shot at joy. So for you, could you do a list of 30 things that make you happy?
Yeah. Yes, I could.
Yeah.
And it brings a couple of things to mind. I mean, there is another list that some people make, and the word bucket is thrown in there. That's another kind of list, that might include backpacking across Europe, because these are one-time events. You're talking about dailies and life joys that we can derive daily. But if we talk about retirement, a person that I like to look at sort of as a mini example is Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett this year is going to turn 93, or at least I'm assuming he's going to turn 93. He obviously has the means, but he also really feels fulfilled by the work he does. And little things, like you said, he goes to not necessarily healthy things, but goes to McDonald's, apparently, from what I hear, drinks the Diet Coke, the Cherry Coke, whatever it is that he drinks. And those are satisfying. I'm sure he has many more. But I mean, he chose, despite being worth $100 billion, not to retire at all. So he's now 92 and a half. I think that's an interesting example. I mean, he may not get a big satisfaction out of the yacht with a helicopter, even though he can easily do it.
Right.
But he goes to McDonald's and drinks the Coke. I mean, and that's fun.
Yeah. You're highlighting the idea of a couple things, simple pleasures, right? That goes back to the simple happy list, right? You know, one woman I'm thinking of was just, I love tinkering with orchids inside. And I'm like, well, hey, she's like, tell me about when was the last time you did it? I haven't had orchids for years. Well, go buy some freaking orchids. And so that's the version of the simple pleasure. The Warren Buffett likes his Egg McMuffin in the morning, rock on. Doesn't matter. You know, at some point, you know, we could debate, split hairs about healthy or not healthy. This goes back to relativity, and that, you know, someone might love their life that looks flashy and fancy, and someone might like their simple life because I think there's room for it to be cheap and cheerful. So we could be vitality and meaning filled on any budget, and it can suit any need or any taste. The question really just comes down to, for each and every one of us, do you feel like you're leaving life on the table? Do you feel like your life is passing you by in a way that you might want to just turn the dial up a little bit on the stuff you might enjoy doing? And I've got two ways to look at it we can get into if you want. And if you have that niggling, that sense of maybe there could be a little more that I could do to really get a little more, I don't know, juice out of this life, then that's your opportunity, whether it involves a budget, whether it involves travel, whatever that looks like for you. That's the opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of threw an idea that popped to my head.
Yeah.
My ex-wife used to bring her, elderly parents to visit us from another country. And her mother was getting quite old and quite frail. There was not much she could do. But I remember she would go in the backyard and just sit in a chair in the sun. And it was nobody needed to tell me. It was pure enjoyment. It was pure joy. I mean, talk about simple, and it doesn't cost much to sit in the sun. So, I mean, yeah, I don't think the nature of what we do is the thing. For her, that was, and by the way, that's important, because you can say, oh, everyone can do, really? Surprisingly, so many, older people will stay inside and watch TV.
Yeah. So
just to go out in the sun is already something.
Oh, yeah. You're making me think about, aspects of well-being and nature for many people is this restorative opportunity. And a lot of doctors are actually prescribing, they call them nature prescriptions, where it's 20 minutes sitting in a green space. You could be in the middle of a concrete jungle in a city, and you could find some kind of concocted park that has a few trees that will be restorative it will deliver a well-being hit. So nature, I mean, I'm an indoor cat, I'm fine inside, but I agree with you. Watching your former mother-in-law it's a great exercise also to watch someone else be in their element and just see, again, extract some kind of joy from whatever they're doing. And whether it's something that is sort of a passive experience of enjoyment. I work with a lot of people where they say, I just love sitting and watching my grandkids play. It makes me feel so alive and I just love it. And well, then more power to you. Keep doing it, right? Other people find that was one of many things that gives them joy is something that creates that experience of flow. And I'm sure, you're familiar with that, right? It's that absorption, the state of losing track of time, being in the zone.
We should interview the guy, Chad.
Well, Csikszentmihalyi, he passed away in October. So
oh my God, then
that'll be a tough interview.
One of his disciples, sorry about that. My ignorance shone through as always. One of his disciples.
Yeah, one of his disciples indeed. And I look and I go, okay, behind you, for example, your guitars. I'm somehow imagining that when you play the guitar, do you somehow get swept up in that experience of just being in flow? Is that fair for you?
Especially when I write the lyrics. That's really it really seems to just come out.
Oh, interesting. So that's a recipe, or put it this way, it's an ingredient in the recipe for a life well lived. It's that back to the thing about writing out our simple, easy peasy, happy list. A part two to that, or even just highlighting some of the things on the list, identifying the activities that we find ourselves swept up and lost in. That's true engagement. It's one of the core elements of well-being. that is like, that's the highlight reel. And that's if you know that for some of us, it's rock climbing, or for you, it's writing lyrics. For others, it often can be active, but it can be in a task. It's the sweet spot between feeling really challenged and challenge and skill. So it's got to be just challenging enough to not feel like you were throwing a softball, but not so easy that you feel like, well, that was
Hold on a second. Right now, in this moment, both you and I, we are, and me, we are, engaged in something that feels fulfilling. You are bursting with enthusiasm to spread your message. I love the interview process and learning and getting to know another fascinating person and learning from them. So at this very moment, we are not watching television. We are doing something and it's also productive. I mean, there are going to be people watching, listening, getting something out of it. So actually, what we are doing right now is an example for both of us.
I love that you've said that. And now you're highlighting a whole other kind of concept that's out there, which is great. It's this notion called positivity resonance. And it's often when people are experiencing something together, like a concert is a really easy example, because everybody's swept up in the music together. And, research shows that people actually will become there's a synchronicity of even heart rates. People just get into this really great groove together. I love your observation, because you're right. We're both in our element right now of passion and enthusiasm, and we are engaged. And so there's just something that does reverberate around this overall experience. So like, high five to us for having a really good hour of our lives right now, at least. I mean, hopefully others are benefiting, but you're right. We're in our zone. This is good.
Right. So, it occurs to me that I wonder if this thing can be sliced salami style in another way. I mean, another day has passed. Yeah. What happened today? Were there some moments of what you call the list of 30? Were there 5, 1, 0, 31? Another day. So isn't that a tool for us to look at it and say, okay, what was this day like? Yeah. What would I like tomorrow to be like?
You're speaking my language now, because this is where things transition from tuning in to the things that might give you joy. And now all of a sudden, I'm going to be super honest. This is where things get less glamorous. And let's just lament for a quick sec that we all want these astonishing lives to just sort of happen to us. But they do require, admittedly, the onerous task, it's kind of pesky, of planning them. And so we don't usually, let's see, the example of you writing lyrics, or client tending to her garden. We have to take action to make that happen, right? It's not necessarily, 45 minutes in your life isn't just going to fantastically open up and present itself to you. You need to make it happen. And that is where things get prescriptive. And that's where I recommend there's this low-hanging fruit in positive psychology called pre-savoring or anticipation. Having something to look forward to is one of the easiest ways to just get yourself in a good mental space. So are you looking forward to something? I look at it like, look at your calendar. You need to have something in your calendar within 1 week, 1 month, and 1 year that you're looking forward to. And it doesn't, again, back to, we don't need it to be about yachts and jet setting. It can be like, I am really looking forward tomorrow night, we're ordering pizza. Like, that is just a simple thing that I love to look forward to. I'm already planning what I'm ordering. I already know exactly what I'm going to put on my 2 pizzas, because we order 2 each. And what is 7 days ahead for you? It could be something social. It could be a really neat work project. It could be a hobby that you're engaged in. It could be anything. And then the same thing about a year, when the stakes might be a bit higher, right? It might be like, I'm going to go visit my college roommate on the West Coast, or I'm going to go on that trip, or I'm going to start that program online that I've been just dying to get started on. So I like your point, looking backwards on your day to say, what did I do today that made me feel alive? Those are really good assessments. Might be a good time to stuff it into kind of a gratitude journal exercise too. And what do you got planned for the next 7, 30, 365 days of your precious life? What's ahead?
Don't you want to count by Mondays?
I want to count them so badly. By the time we're done our conversation, I'm going to get the Mondays out of you.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am ready to be Mondayed.
Okay,
I'm okay.
I have my calculator out. All right.
So you know, even in my financial company life, I talk to people every single day. Yeah. And the gist of what I do is that you can change your financial life, but it doesn't happen in one day. It happens usually in a decade or more. Mm-hmm. So it's very funny for me because I'm from Silicon Valley by background. I talk a lot to Silicon Valley people. Mm-hmm. So it's very funny when I talk to somebody who says, oh my God, I missed the boat. I'm already 39. It's way too late for me to start. And it kind of makes you chuckle because, you can start at 76 and still make not only a huge difference in your life, but in the life of your children or heirs. But I mean, that resignation that many people, never mind financially, but they say, oh, you don't teach an old dog new tricks. I'm older. And some people think that they're old at 40 and some people think that they're old, at 80. It doesn't matter. But what do you say to that kind of a mindset? Stay tuned for part 2 of this interview. Thank you for joining us today. I know you love what's coming next in part 2. Be sure to click the subscribe button for more videos.